Hi everyone, welcome you all. So in the today's video, I'm going to talk about the concept of API chaining. So basically what is API chaining? So sometimes we have some API and we will send some request to this API and the API will give you response. So from this particular response, we will extract some data and we use the data in other API. So when I send another request to another API, so whatever the response we capture from the first API, we will use the data in another request. Again, this API will return something for us in the response. Again, we'll extract some data and we will use the data in another request. So this is the concept of API chaining. Okay, so now we will see how we can achieve this in Cypress. And before that, we will try to explore some APIs in a Postman tool. And then we'll come back to Cypress and then we'll see how we can achieve this API chaining. So let me open my Postman tool. And if I look at here, I have one API, which is JSON placeholder. And I have a two different type of request. And when you open this GET request, you can see this particular API request, HTTP request will give you all the posts which are available in the database. So when you send this request, you got all the posts which are there in the database. So once you get this response, we have to extract some data from this, let's say user ID or title, whatever you want to capture this. Now I'll use this ID. So there are multiple records are there in this particular response. So this is basically JSON array. And this is the first item in JSON array, and this is the second item and the third item and so on. There are multiple items are there. So now what I want to do, I want to extract this user ID from the first item in the JSON array. And this I will send in another request. Now, if you go back to the another request, this is also a GET request. And here, which will return all the comments which are there in the database. Now I want to get the comments of a specific post. Then you can pass one query parameter post ID equal to 1. So whatever posts we have captured here, I'll get this ID and then I will pass that ID in the another request as a query parameter. So this will return actual comments which are there for the same post ID. So you can just look at all the data, the post ID value is same. Okay. So these two APIs are related. So first API will return all the posts which are available in the database and we can extract the post ID. And by using the post ID, if you want to see what are the comments are there for that particular post, then I can send one more GET request and here I'll pass one query parameter post ID equal to 1. And this will give you all the comments which are created under this particular post. So this is a link between these two APIs. Okay. Now we'll see how we can achieve this in Cypress in the simplest way. So this is very simple API. So first let us try to understand how we can do this and then we will see some complex API. Okay. Now go back to the Cypress. Now under API testing, I'm going to create a new spec file. Let's say new. And here API chaining, and this is a JSON placeholder API .cy.js. Okay, so first of all, we need to write a describe block. Say describe and two parameters. So here I'm just saying API chaining concept and then arrow function. All right, so first of all, we will send first request. So if I look at the Postman tool, this is our first request we are going to send. This is a GET request and we will get a response. And from the response, we have to extract the ID of that particular post. So I'm writing one it block and I'm writing one description. This is a getting all the posts which are available in the database. And now this is my arrow function. So now we need to send GET request. So I say cy.request and inside the request we have to pass multiple things. So what type of request we have to send? We have to send GET request. So the method is what? GET, which is capital letter. And what else we have to pass? URL. So this is the URL which I'm going to send. This is our GET request URL, which will return all the posts which are there in the database. Okay. So now we have sent GET request with the URL. And what we need to do now, once you send this request, dot then will capture the response from that API in a variable. And once you capture the response from this variable, we will do certain validations. So write an arrow function again. So inside this, right? So inside this response, we have to first extract the ID of the post. So if I look at the Postman tool, whenever you send this request, we got multiple posts here in the JSON response. So we have to capture the particular post ID. So there are so many number of posts are there, and ID is also different. So I want to capture the ID of the particular post. So for example, in this response, so this is all response body, and this is my first item in the JSON array, and this is a second item in the JSON array. So the whole thing will be considered as a body. So if you want to extract this ID from the first item, so we need to properly write a JSON path. So before that, before extracting that, I will verify the status code of this, whether the request is successful or not. So I can say expect response dot status and dot equals to what? 200. So this is our response code we are expecting. And once you put this assertion, then we have to extract the ID from this request, from the response. So how to extract? So here this whole thing will be considered as a body and body of the response. And inside this body, we have to get the first item. Again, in the first item, we have to capture the ID. So how can we extract this from the response? From the response and body of 1, because the response contains a JSON array. So the first item is a 0, index will start from 0. And inside the first item, I want to capture the ID. And that ID, I'm going to store in a variable. So this I'm going to create one constant variable, and I will name it as post ID, like this. Okay, now I have captured the post ID, and after that, we will use this post ID in another request, right? So for that, what I'm doing is I'm just returning this post ID. I'm just returning this post ID, and then this then block is got closed. So this is got closed. Okay, so we are sending the get request and capturing the response and validate the status code and capture the ID and returning the post ID. So this is the first request. Now, what could be the second request? Now we have to send another get request where we have to use post ID as a query parameter. So now what we can do is, once you send this request, once you get a response, from the response, we have extracted post ID. By using this post ID, we have to send another request. So we have to write another then section. So one request can have multiple thens. Okay, so here we have sent one request and we got the response and we have done validations and captured the post ID, return the post ID. Now we have to use this post ID in another request. Again, then, so we'll extract the post ID here. Post ID, we have whatever post ID we have written it, we have extracted here. That is a post ID. And after that, let's write an arrow function one more time. So this post ID, by using this post ID, we have to send one more request. Okay, one more request. How to send a request? Again, cy.get or cy.request. And here, again, we have to send one other request. So what is the request method? Second one is also get. And what is the URL which we have to send? Second URL. So second URL will be this one. So which is also having query parameter. So this is basically the full-fledged query which contains the query parameter post ID. So actually the post ID comes from previous request, right? So this is the URL. And what we need to do is in this particular URL, so we have to send this post ID as a query parameter. So we should not hard code this value. So this query post ID should come from here. So whatever post ID we have captured from the previous response, we have to pass that same post ID. And how to pass this post ID? If you want to pass a query parameter, we can just pass like this. Keep in the curly braces and then use one $sign like this. Okay, and then we have to close this. We have to close this command. So this is how we can simply specify the URL along with the query parameter. And this parameter, the post ID comes from where? Previous response. Now, first we have sent a get request. We got the post ID. and we are returning the post ID. That post ID we are again using in another then. Okay, now we have send a request. So once you send a request, again we have to do the validation dot then again capture the response. From the second request, we have to capture the response, and then we have to do validation expect. So response dot status dot to dot equal, and status should be 200. And what else we can validate in this? Suppose we go to second response with this post ID, how many comments are there totally? This is a one. Let me send this request once again. So this is a one item, second, third, 4, and 5. So totally 5 comments are there, and 5 items are then this JSON array. So for that particular post, so that also we can validate expect response dot body dot to have length. So if you want to find a number of items in a JSON array, we use this method. So length of what we are expecting is 5. So that you can specify. Okay. So this is how we can achieve the chaining part. So in the first request, we are sending the get URL, and we are getting the response and extracting the post ID. And again, we are writing another then section inside this post ID. Whatever we have written here, we are receiving in this. And by using this post ID, we are again sending another request and getting the response. And then we are validating the response here. So this is how we can simply achieve chaining concept in Cypress. Okay, so this post ID we are returning here. So after completion of every request, we will get a response. And we are returning, we have extracted the post ID from the response, and we are returning it. Sometimes without returning that also we can use in another request. Okay, next example, I will show you that. So let us try to execute this first. Okay, and first of all, let me just beautify this code. Right, so now let me save the file and then try to execute. So to execute this, let me go to the terminal. Open the new terminal and then npx Cypress open. So now I have opened Cypress application. Right, so end-to-end testing, start E2A testing in the Chrome. Then we got all the options in this. Just a moment, I think, which is already open earlier. Just a second, let me close this. Okay, so let me run this command one more time. npx Cypress open. Okay, now I got all the spec files, and now I'm running API chaining JSON placeholder. Yeah, now everything is got passed. Now you can just look at this. We are sending the first request, and the status code is matching. And now you can observe in the first request, whatever ID we have captured, that ID is substituted in the second request. Now again, status code equal, and the JSON array is again contains 5 items. And they are basically comments which are created for single post, that is post ID equal to 1. Okay, so like that, we can link multiple APIs. So the response from one API will become the request for another API. So we can extract the response, and we can extract the data from the response, and we can use the same data for another API request. That is basically called as API chaining. So now let me show you one more example. And most of the times when you testing your APIs, most of the times we create a post, we create a resource, then we will try to update the resource, and then we will try to delete the resource. So these 3 operations are linked together, right? So now I'm going to show you one more example. Let's take one more type of API, which is GoRest API, which is very popular API, and which we can do a lot of operations on this. So GoRest API chaining. So first of all, let me show you how we can work with that API. So you can just type gorest.co.in, and these are the free APIs they have provided. And if you want to access these APIs, we have to get the access token first. Okay, so to get the access token, just click on this link, and we need to authenticate with either Google, GitHub, Microsoft, whatever. So when I click on this GitHub, I'm now authenticating with the GitHub, and automatically it will generate the token like this. So this is a token which we have to use in your Go REST APIs. Okay. So now if I go back, so these are the APIs I'm going to show you now. So with this, I'm going to create a new user. And after that, I will try to update the user. Then finally, I will delete the user. And once you created your new user, it will create a new user with ID. So I'm going to use that ID for updating the user. And also I will use the same ID for deleting the user. So we'll achieve the API chaining concept here. So let us see how we can do this. So now go back to the VS Code editor. Now I'm going to create new class API chaining go rest dot cy.js. So before that, let me show you in the Postman tool. Okay, if I just go to the Postman tool, this is a create new user request. So basically, I'm using some URL parameter. So these parameters, environment variables, I already created at the collection level. If I just go to collection level, so this variable you already created. So this URL variable, I'm trying to use in my request, and this is an endpoint. So whenever you are sending the post request, we have to pass the data also. So name, gender, email, status. So these are the 4 details we have to pass. Again, this name I'm randomly generating, email also randomly generating. So these two I create 2 environment variables. So if I just go to pre-request script, here we can create. So here you can just look at here. I'm randomly creating user email and user name, and I'm creating them as a environment variables so that I can use those variables throughout my collection. So this email and name will come from environment variable. Dynamically, they will create. Now, if I go back to the body, so this is the data which we have to send. And every API request needs authentication. So that is provided, GoRest is provided authentication token. So that token, instead of specifying the token in every request, I directly specify that at the collection level. Here, if you go to authorization section, bearer token. So here I put my token here. So the same token is applicable for all the requests. Now, if I look at this, when I go to create a user, just when I'm sending the post request, now you can see this is created a new user with this ID 171578157. Now, if you go back to the update user details, whatever the user which I have created here, right? So in the test, what I'm doing is I'm going to create a new environment variable with this ID. I'm extracting the ID from the JSON data, and then I'm creating user ID environment variable. And that user ID environment variable, again, I'm using in the update user details. So here I'm referring that ID, and again, I'm changing some data, name, email, status. And when you send this, so this is the resource not found. That means it is not created actually. If it is created, if you pass right user ID environment variable, that will update the record. And similarly, if I go to the delete user, whatever the user ID you created, if I provide here, that will go and delete the user. So these are 3 different API requests linked together with ID of the user. Okay. So now we'll see how we can achieve this in the Cypress. Now, if we go back to the Cypress, so first of all, let me start creating the describe block. So listen very carefully, very important. It's a previous example. We have written the data from the response, right? So if I go back to our again previous example, as soon as you send a request, we capture the data and we return it. And the returned data, again, we are using in the then. Inside the then section, we have sent the URL. So like this, we can write any number of thens for one request. Okay. But this time without returning the data, how come we use the data in another request? Right. So this is another way we can write our code in API chaining. So observe very carefully. I'm writing one description block, describe block, and I'll name it as go rest API chaining and arrow function. Okay, so first I'm writing one it block, and before that I will define one keyword constant variable I will maintain so that I can store the authentication token in a variable. I'll say one variable auth token. Okay, so in the singular double quotations, you can maintain the authentication token. So we can just maintain this authentication token like this. So this token I will refer in multiple requests. Okay, so now I'm writing first it block. So here basically what we are doing, we are creating a resource, or we are going to update a resource, and also we are going to delete a resource. 3 operations I'm going to do in GoRest API. Okay. And now one more arrow function. Fine. So now first and most important thing, we have to send get request so that we will get a user ID. Again, if you go back to the Postman, and let me put all the APIs here so that we will implement one by one. Okay, so first we need to send a get request. Right, so sorry, this is not a get request. So this is a post request we have to send first. Okay, so once you send a post request, which will go and create new resource or new user, and which will return the ID of the user. Now in the put request, we have to use that ID and we will update the record. And the third request, by using the same ID, we are going to delete the record. Okay, first we will try to create a new record by using this URL. So for that, I'm going to write first request, cy.request, cy.request, and in the request, and request method, URL, and body, along with the authentication. Everything we have to specify. So my request method is what? Post. My request method is post, and then comma, and then URL, the post URL. So this is my post URL, first post URL, which we have to send here, the single quotation. And then because it is a post URL, we have to send body also. So I'm just passing the body. And in the body, we have to pass multiple fields again. Like we have to pass name, gender, and then email. So first I'm passing a name, and you can pass whatever name you want. I'm just passing John Kennedy something. And then email. So this email is always unique for every user. So this email we have to generate randomly. So every time when you run your script, or if I use same email hard-coded, the script will fail. So instead of hard-coding this email, so I'm just want to generate randomly. For that, we have some functions are available in the JavaScript. In the previous examples also, in the previous videos also, I have told you how to generate the random data in JavaScript. We have to use math class. Inside this, we have a method called random, and dot to string, and how many digits you need to have, just specify that. And from this, extract some substring, and let's say some substring means we say 2, and then it should be in email format. So this will generate the random string, but that is not in email format. So we'll concatenate with some string. So at the rate some gmail.com like this. Okay, so this is a name, email address, and also we need to pass gender along with this name and email. Gender, I can pass male like this. Okay, so this is the body. So name, gender, email, and also we have to pass status. That should be active or inactive. So currently I'm passing active. So this is the request body we have to send along with this URL. And then we need to also authenticate this API request. So for that, we need to pass that token authentication inside the headers. Say headers, and in the column, inside this headers, we need to specify authorization code. Whatever we defined in the above, the same authorization. And authorization is what? This is the one. So we already created auth token that we need to specify like this. Okay. So now we are successfully sending the request. So request method is post, URL, body, which includes body, and then authentication. So this will send the post request and create a new user record. After that, what we have to do, we have to extract the response. Then extract the response, and from that response, we have to extract the ID. Okay, so from this response, we have to extract the ID of the user. So how to extract the ID of the user? If I just go back to the Postman tool, when I send the first request, this is the response we captured. This is the response we got. So from this response, we have to capture this ID so that we can use in another request for updating the record and deleting the record. So how to capture this ID from the response? So to capture the ID from the response, so here, first we will verify the status code and then we will capture the response. Expect response dot and response dot status code, response dot status dot two dot equal, and you can use any of this method dot two equal or two eq, whatever you want. So you can, because it is creating the new record, so status code will be 201. So after that, I want to extract the user ID from this response. So how to extract is simple. Response dot body dot directly ID. So in the response body, this ID field directly available. Only one record, one item is there in the response in the JSON format. So I can extract this ID. So this ID, I'm going to store in a variable. Let's create one variable called user ID. And the type of this variable is what? Let's say const. Okay, so this is how, instead of returning the user ID, I'm storing that user ID in a variable. So this user ID I will use in another request. Okay, so with this, we successfully sent one request and we got the response, expected value 201, and then we got the user ID. Now, by taking the help of this user ID, we have to send another request. And here we are not writing another then request. So we already sent one request, get request. We got the user ID here. Now here itself, instead of returning this user ID, I will use this user ID for updating the record. So here itself, I'm writing the code for updating the resource. Updating user request. So what we need to update, let's try to update the username. So for that, I'm again sending another request. See, I have not written multiple thens, right? So in the previous example, I have written multiple thens, and also I have written the data from the response. But this time I'm not returning anything, and also I'm not returning multiple thens. So first record I have sent, first URL, get URL, post URL I have sent along with the body. And then I got the response. And from the response, I have extracted user ID. Now I'm sending one more request. This is a get request we are sending with that user ID, which we have captured. So not get request, put request, because we want to update the existing record, whichever is created by using previous request. So cy.request. And this time I want to create put request. Inside this, I want to create put request. Fine. How to create? So the method is what? Method is put, because which will update the record. And after that, URL. So what is the URL? So URL is what? Second URL. So this is the one. So this is the URL which we are going to use it here. This is the URL. And this user ID, we have to pass. The user ID we have to pass. So here you have to use, this is not a single quotation actually. So in your keyboard, you can find one single quote along with the tilde symbol. Okay, so you have to use this symbol, especially the JavaScript. So if you put a normal single quotation, it will not work. Okay, you can see the difference between these two. So if you put a single quotation, so the parameter is not allowed. So you can simply put a symbol like this and HTTP go rest public users. And here, this particular user ID, whatever the user ID we captured here, the same user ID we are passing along with the put request. Okay, and this is not enough. We should also specify what are the changes we have to do. What changes we have to do, we have to specify that. Okay, so that is body. I want to change the name of the existing user. So that I can specify in the body. I say name. You can just put any name. So John Kennedy we specified. And this time I can simply say Scott, some name, and then close the body. Okay, so we are sending another request, put request, by passing the user ID and changing the name of the person. And after this, along with the body, we should also authenticate this request also. Authentication applicable for every type of API request, the go rest. So Headers also we have to pass. So whatever headers we have passed for the previous API, the same thing we have to pass here also. Okay, done. So with this, we have successfully sent another request, put request by changing the name, and we are passing the put request like this. And token also we have to pass. Fine. So once it is done, okay, so once it is done, this is the header part is done. And once the request is done, now we need to verify the validation. We need to verify the body. After updating the record, what are the things we can validate? We have updated just name here. So we will check that name is got updated or not. And here I can say dot, then get the response from the previous request. So get the response from the previous request, and we need to validate the response again. So what we need to extract from this response this time? So this time we have to extract again ID. We already extracted ID earlier. So same ID we can use for delete request also. So simply we can validate the data. So we need to no need to extract anything from the response. So we can just validate the data in the response. So directly I can put one assertion, expect response dot status, and the response dot status should be dot equal to what? 200. This is a put request, so obviously it will be the 200. And also whatever the name we have renamed, right? So we have changed in the update request, that name also we can verify. I can say expect response dot body dot name. So whatever the body contains a name attribute, and that should be dot equal, right? So dot equal to, and what is the name we have provided in updation Scott. So that again same name we provided here. Okay, these are the two validations. So let me repeat what I have done so far is, first we have sent a post request along with the body and access token, and then we got the response. So from the response we capture the user ID, and then we have sent another request, which is post request, updating the record. And once you updated the name of the record, then we capture the response again and we validate the response. The name is got, same name is got updated here or not, we have validated. And apart from this, we also do the delete request. We have to do the delete request also. So we'll continue on the same then section here. After verification is done, so now we'll start deleting the record, delete the resource. Okay, so here, if you notice, we are not returning any data from the response. Whatever the data we are getting here, user ID, we directly passing into next URL. And again, same URL, same user ID, I'm again passing into the delete request here. Fine. So cy.request, one more request I'm going to send. cy.request. And inside the cy.request, we have to again pass delete request. So what is the method? So method is what? Delete. Method is delete, comma. And URL. So what is the URL we have to send? So in this, we have to specify this URL. Again, we have to pass the same URL, but this time we are going to do a delete operation based on the user ID. So here we have to pass user ID as a path parameter inside this URL. And headers again same, because this also delete is also required authentication. So after passing this URL, so then headers we need to specify. Okay, so this will go along with the delete request. So request type, URL, and then authentication. That is part of headers. So once you send this delete request, in the response, we can validate the status code. Okay, so now we can say dot then. So here I'm writing another then. So then capture the response from the delete request. Capture the response from the delete request. And what we are expecting here is simply expect response dot status dot to equal, that is 204. So after deletion, we will get 204 is a status code. Fine. So this is how we have to chain the APIs. So what exactly we have done is, first we have sent a post request, then we got the user ID, and then we have sent put request by passing the user ID as a parameter. Now we have sent a delete request. There also we have passed user ID as a parameter. So now first request we have sent here, that is post request. Once you get a response, from the response we extracted user ID, and again we have sent another request by using this user ID. And inside this, again, once you send this put request, again we got the response and validate the response body. And then again I have sent another request for delete, and then finally I verify the status code. So this is how we can simply write our code for API chaining. So let me beautify the code. Yeah, now everything is done. So if you want to change any data, you can simply change it. So here, this is the one more thing. So every time we will generate the random email ID, which is most important. So this name is John Kennedy. Okay, and so what is the name we want to update? So that you can specify here. I can just say Scott. And the validation point is also Scott here. Done. Okay, so once it is done, so now we can just save the code. And now go back to the Cypress window and then execute here. So this is the next code, API chaining, go rest, go here. Yes, perfectly executed. Now if you can just look at here, this is my first request, which is a post request, and then put request, and then delete request. And if I look at here, put request and delete request, the same ID is got used. So you can run this any number of times. The new ID will be generated. You can see 1578640. Now again, if I execute here, 1576643. So this ID randomly generated. Okay, because the email ID will not be the same. So the email ID we have to generate here. That email ID we have to generate randomly, and the user ID also randomly generated. For every user is having a unique ID, so that is going to generate. Okay, so this is how we can simply achieve API chaining in Cypress. So there are two approaches. In the first approach, we have written the data, and again we have created another then section after returning it. Multiple thens we have created. But in this example, we have sent one request and we are not returning any data. Basically, we are getting the response data. Instead of returning, we are writing another request. There also we are sending the user ID. And after that, again, one more then we have written and capture the response and validation is done. Then we have sent another request. So these are the two different approaches which we can use while writing the API chaining. Okay. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we'll discuss another topics. Thanks for watching.